Welcome back to ATS Academy. In this video, we're going to be going over the different types of patch panels you're probably going to see in the field and just some basic pros and cons between the two. If you haven't already subscribed to the page, I would encourage you to subscribe because we're going to continue to put out a lot of videos regarding just the basic fundamentals of structured cabling, network cabling, fiber optic terminations, and everything in between. So subscribe if you're interested in this type of content. Anyway, let's get to these panels. You can see right above this 48 port network switch, we have what some people will call a modular panel, or others will call an unloaded panel. It's a 24 port 1U, which means it takes up one rack unit. And below is a loaded, or a 110 style 24 port 1U patch panel. Now immediately you can see the difference. The modular unloaded panel, you have to put keystone jacks in individually for every cable that you're going to have on this panel. The loaded panels are pre-engineered and manufactured in a way where you already have your 24 ports and you punch your cables in with the 110 style. That's why some people might call them a 110 panel. You punch in with a 110 blade and a punch tool each individual cable coinciding to each individual port. Now, we were seeing a lot more of the unloaded modular panels in the field, and immediately a few pros and cons between punching the cables in like this, especially on this. This is a swinging rack, which means it's hinged. It can open up one or two ways, to the left or to the right. If you have a loaded panel and people are swinging this rack open and closed, they're more prone to pulling the wires straight out. They punch straight in. So if there's any kind of stress or anything like that constantly on these cables, the cables are going to pull out. Here, you're punching them into a jack and putting them in each individual port, so you're not going to have that problem. Also, there's no way to tell how many cables are punched down to this loaded 24 port panel. Immediately you can tell that there are 3 cables here because there are 3 jacks here. Another really cool thing about the unloaded panels that you can't do with the loaded panels is have an example right here. This black patch cable going to port 48 on the switch is passing through port 20 because it's empty. This is the LAN connection from the firewall. You can use this almost as like a wire management situation. If you have limited space, say this was a 6U rack, that means you'd only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rack units to work with. Everything from here below doesn't exist in a 6U rack. So if this was a 6U rack, you're able to have your, say this is your fiber maybe coming in. Here's your firewall. Here's a patch panel, your switch. You can use this as wire management, and you can use either, this is a 1-footer, or in this case, you probably would use a 6-inch cable to make your links between this. Also, you can group your cables. If these purple jacks are office drops and you want to use, say, orange jacks for APs, yellow jacks for cameras, you can group your different cables by category with different color jacks. You can even put them, leave a few spaces. So if this was 3 office drops, you could say leave up to port 10 open for office expansion if they wanted to add any cabling to the office. And then maybe you had 5 APs, you would put 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, whatever orange jacks if you're using orange for APs, and then leave a few open ports for expansion. Then maybe you had green jacks or something for your cameras, then you could do that way. And then if someone, God forbid, they hire another contractor to come behind you, it's easy for them to add cables to your setup versus coming in and having to sometimes pull this panel off to punch down cables to it. You never know. You don't want to be moving this stuff around because this is more prone to pull off. So you're going to see a lot more of the unloaded panels in the field. And then as far as punching down to your loaded panels, these numberings can confuse text sometimes in the field. You got 7, 8, 9. It's easy to mix up. I got 7 and 8. I might punch 8 down where 7 goes and 7 where 8 goes, depending on the manufacturer and how they do their labeling. In this case, if you have each cable terminated to a keystone jack, you can pop them in, which you can still pop them in the wrong port. I've done it. I'm sure many of you have as well, and you find it during testing and just swap them. But that's it. You're just popping out a keystone jack and popping it into the next port. You don't have to pull a cable off and re-terminate. So you're going to see a lot more people doing the modular panels or unloaded panels. They're easier to customize, easier to work with, and less prone for your cables to be pulling out. So I don't really have many pros for the loaded panel other than the look. You don't have empty spaces. It's a cleaner look, but it's really boils down to your preference.